While it failed at getting a coup off the ground, the Iraqi National Accord was more successful at running its own bombing campaign within Iraq. It apparently managed to blow up this theatre in Baghdad in 1995, one of a series of bombings of public buildings across Iraq in the mid-90s in which dozens of civilians were killed. A man known as Amne al-Qadami claimed responsibility for the attacks on behalf of the INA. Patrick Coburn, a journalist at the independent newspaper in London, obtained a recording of Qadami's confession in 1996. So, as I understand it, Qadami admits that he ran a bombing campaign on behalf of the Iraqi National Accord, the organisation that was run by Ead Alawi. That's right?
That's right, yeah. That's what he says that, and says that several times in this recording he made.
And the INA at the time was funded by the United States?
Yes, and he refers again to the worries within the organisation that US funding would stop unless the organisation could show that it was doing something in Baghdad against Saddam.
What sort of places were bombed and what sort of casualties were involved in these bombings?
There seem to have been about 100 people killed. It's difficult to estimate how many died.
The Iraqi National Congress, led by Ahmed Chalabi, was the bitter rival of Alawi's group, the INA, and a competitor for US funds. Chalabi's headquarters in Iraqi Kurdistan were blown up in October 1995, killing almost 30 people. And Patrick Coburn's source claims Alawi's organisation was responsible for this. Do you know if Ead Alawi was aware of any of this bombing campaign or if he's ever been held accountable for it at all?
He's certainly never been held accountable. I don't see that he could have been unaware of it, because the INA wasn't doing very much at the time. This was its main activity. In fact, it wanted to show that it had some presence in Iraq. So I can't see how he would be unaware of this.
When the US government was trying to build the case for war in Iraq, its years of support for Ead Alawi and other opposition leaders began to pay off. The Iraqi opposition was more than happy to manufacture intelligence on Saddam's weapons of mass destruction and his links to the September 11 attacks. According to former CIA officer Bob Bayer, much of this information was clearly bogus.
10 Downing Street in the White House, the way it worked was essentially, we want to go to war. And they went to the opposition and said, give us talking points. Chalabi and Alawi, who then proceeded to go out and make things up. It's that simple. This is a deductive process. We've decided to do this. It's good for our strategy on terrorism. We have no information. You go, guys, give us talking points, which we can then recirculate in the press.
In December last year, an extraordinary story appeared in the Sunday Telegraph in London. A one-page memo, supposedly handwritten by the head of Iraqi intelligence, had been discovered. It claimed the September 11 hijackers were trained in Baghdad by Palestinian terrorist Abu Nidal with the blessing of Saddam Hussein. On the same page, it also conveniently discussed how Iraq was planning to buy uranium yellowcake from Niger. The memo was provided by Ead Alawi's Iraqi National Accord. He told the newspaper, "We're uncovering evidence all the time of Saddam's involvement with Al-Qaeda, but this is the most compelling evidence we've found so far." Bob Bayer says Alawi had a long record of providing forged documents and dubious information to the CIA.
The whole thing's just crazy. You could sit Alawi down and say, this is crazy, come on. If this really happened, let's see some evidence. He'd say, of course, I got no evidence. But when there was a willing audience, this all changed. I found Alawi extremely credible. If you sat him down and just say, this is bullshit, this is not true, he'd say, of course it's not true. And then they'd laugh about it and move on.
Alawi's rival, Ahmed Chalabi, was well known in the West and was widely expected to be installed as Iraqi Prime Minister. But he fell out with the Americans when they accused him of leaking intelligence to the Iranian government. In June this year, it was Ead Alawi who got the top job. But it didn't take long for more allegations of his ruthlessness to appear. Fairfax journalist Paul McGough reported in July that just prior to the handover of power in Iraq, Eyaad Alawi personally executed 6 prisoners in the back of a Baghdad police station. McGough spoke to 2 men who claimed to be eyewitnesses to the shootings.
And according to both witnesses, at that point Alawi pulled a pistol from his own belt and proceeded to shoot them. And they both gave me a very similar imitation of the hand going down the line, stopping on each of them and shooting indeed 6 of them, wounding the 7th in the line.
David Ignatius was in Baghdad when the story broke and questioned Alawi about it.
I asked him about the most recent story that appeared in the Australian press about him executing prisoners when I was there in July. The story had just broken. And I also asked, and he laughed and dismissed it, but then he would. So I also asked people at the American embassy who were in a position to check his whereabouts because they have the records of his bodyguards who were traveling with him, and I think are either an American company or whatever. And they said that they had, when this allegation first surfaced, looked carefully and had concluded that he couldn't be at the place that he was supposed to have been when this took place because he was somewhere else, and they had the evidence to show that.
Both US government and public commentators we've spoken to in the Middle East and in Washington say that they can prove, that the US government can prove that Alawi was not there at the time that this was supposed to have taken place. How do you respond to those claims?
It's interesting they say they can do that. They've never done it. They've never gone out of their way to prove that he was or wasn't there, other than to claim it in very loose terms. If they've got logs of movements, of the names of officers who were assigned to him at the time, where they were, let's see them.
The interesting thing about this is that, for some Iraqis, the notion that they have a prime minister who's prepared to, pot people, in a police station, which we find horrifying, that they find encouraging in the sense that, well, we got a tough guy back in control.
Mr. Alawi declined repeated interview requests from Dateline's reporter in Baghdad, and at the time of going to air, there'd been no response to a detailed list of questions sent to his office. Alawi has certainly demonstrated his tough guy credentials in the attack on Fallujah, accepting the likelihood that civilians would be caught in the crossfire. But as he declares war on insurgents in city after city, Alawi is rapidly running out of internal support. The Sunni Cleric Association held this press conference after troops were sent into Samarra.
Yeah, John Martinez, SBS Australia. Do you blame the government of Alawi for the move into Samarra, or do you blame the American military directly?
نحن في بياننا حملنا الحكومة العراقية مسؤولية ما يحدث في سامراء، واستندنا في هذه الخطوة على تصريحاتهم. هم يظهرون على الشاشة كل ساعة ساعتين يقولون نحن من أذنا للأمريكيين في هذه العملية الخطيرة، إذن هم شركاء للأمريكيين، ونحن نحمل الحكومة العراقية المسؤولية كاملة، ونعتقد أنها في الطريق الخطأ.
The Sunni clerics believe they offered Alawi a chance to work together, but they say that opportunity is now gone.
ضيعها حينما بدأ بضرب النجف. الشعب العراقي شعب عاطفي لا يتقبل أن تشترك القوات العراقية مع قوات الاحتلال في ضرب أبنائه، وهذا ما فعله أياد علاوي للأسف الشديد.
As a result of the attack on Fallujah, the Sunni clerics have declared they'll not take part in the elections in January. Despite this, Alawi is still claiming the elections will go ahead.
So let me be absolutely clear. Elections will occur in Iraq on time in January because Iraqis want elections on time.
Bob Bayer's mission in Iraq for the CIA was to help overthrow Saddam and install a democratic government. He says Alawi has always been an old-school strongman with little interest in democracy. But not even he believes elections will go ahead in January.
is just total bullshit. It's just crap. It's, you know, holding elections in Iraq in January, it's just not going to happen. Credible elections. Alawi knows it, but you know, what can he do? The administration in Washington is just going to hold elections in January, and we're going to hold you in power. You know, he's got to go along, but he can't get into these cities. They never will be. Oh yeah, you can get into them. You got to flatten them. You have to flatten all of them: Samarra, Fallujah, Najaf, Karbala, and disperse the population. But I mean, that's not exactly the way you impose democracy.